Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Awakening Together, Relaxing into Happiness. I'm William Cooper. I trust your day is going well, and I see my friends there. Hi, Jennifer. I see Blossom. Well, I trust you're all doing well. This is a time for anybody to ask questions that they have, and we can start a discussion. And when we ended in the last podcast, Catherine asked a question that I just didn't have time to answer because it's a big question, and I thought I might answer it today. Her question was, are there any gurus offering transmissions? And that was her question. I imagine she was talking about transmissions for awakening, although there are many different kinds of transmissions. And I was looking, is Catherine here today? Maybe not. But we'll answer her question. If you've listened to these podcasts, you know that what I've done is I've taken everything that I've experienced and learned, and starting with podcast number 1, I try to lay it out in a fairly orderly way so that the average person can have access to the information that I found helpful in my path. And in these podcasts, it's all about you awakening, you being your happy self. It's not about getting a guru. It's not about needing anybody else. It's listening to your heart. However, gurus can be helpful, and that is a question that many people wonder about. So let's talk about it. Yes, there are gurus that give transmissions for awakening and for all sorts of other things, healing, experiencing love, experiencing all different kinds of states, or even having powers to manifest things. And I'm going to give you a way to find these gurus. They often come to the United States and Europe, and they go on tours, many of them. There are thousands and thousands of them in India and other places around the world, but some of them just come to you. Now, the first value of being around one of these powerful gurus isn't that they give you awakening, but it's more that you can feel such power and light that it's palpable. And this is the same power and light that's in you underneath the surface, and you'll recognize it. But it's so strong that it will rock your world a bit, because previously to coming across some of these gurus, I didn't really realize the power that we all exude, the power that runs through us all, the oneness that is us. It's generally so covered over that we, and I'm speaking of me, don't really experience much. We experience what we think is a normal life, but it's really a covered up life. And that's what the series of podcasts have been about, how to uncover those crusts and blockages, and also at the same time, how to rest in your true self and let that radiate out. In the meantime, if you have the opportunity to experience a guru, although it's not mandatory, it can be very powerful in bringing you forward and quickening your awakening process. So many of you know my background, but many don't. So I'm going to say a few things because you're going to wonder where I'm coming from when I talk about these gurus, and this may explain it. I, like probably you, have been on a path for quite some time. I first started meditating in 1973. And I've been to India now 14 times, averaging about 3 months per visit. And I've sat with hundreds of awakened gurus or beings, whatever you want to call them. Some I've experienced their energy. I've sat with them over 1,000 times, others hundreds of times. So I've gained a perspective. My guru I was with, I'm no longer with him. He said that it was time for me to go out on my own. But I was with him for over 10 years, and I had a firsthand experience of what that power can do in your life. I ended up leaving all of that because in the end, it's inside of all of us, and we don't really need a guru, except for maybe temporarily, like training wheels. So, yes, I've been 14 times to India, once to Bhutan. I went down to Brazil and I sat and met John of God. He's a healer. He's now in prison. That's another story. Thailand. I've gone all over. I've gone all over the United States seeing these different gurus as well. Almost anybody you can think of, I've been with them through the decades. When I was in Austin, where I lived for about 30 years, when I was with my guru, I started a spiritual group only because his wife, what can you say? She said she would do some miracles if I started a group. I wanted those miracles. I asked her for 3 things. I asked her for an end of my suffering, awakening, and to be able to help people. And she said she would grant those 3 miracles if I started a group in Austin. So I did. I didn't have any high hopes for it, but I just said I would, so I did. I thought maybe we would meet once or twice, but it quickly started to be about 100 people. We would meet on every Friday and became very powerful. People's lives were changing. There was so much power coming through that people literally couldn't move, and they were seeing different realities and realms, things that seem very crazy. They don't seem likely. They seem like, yeah, I don't know. Well, I was like you. It was like, yeah, I don't know, except I experienced it, and then my guru's power started running through me. So let me explain how my experience is. Oh, and I'm also a psychotherapist in private practice, and I've seen thousands of people. So I've had a lot of practice with East and West. I've also have a Master of Theology. I was in theological school for 4 years, lived on campus, was with a lot of theological scholars, and could talk to them every day. So from different angles, I've come at this. That's my background, and that's where I'm getting my perspective to answer Catherine's question. So before we get into the specific gurus and what they do, think of this. Here's a piece of paper, and let's say I fold this paper up into a little square. And then I put this paper in my pocket. Now, if you've ever listened to Ram Dass, he had a lot of openings using psychedelic drugs. Now, I asked him, I said, well, do psychedelic drugs awaken you? And he says, well, you get a glimpse of awakening, and then it's like a rubber band is tied to your back and it pulls you back. and you're no longer awake. And so you have to keep doing them over and over and over with maybe diminishing returns. He didn't say the diminishing returns part, but just from what I've observed from others, that seems possibly to be the case. When I was in Brazil, they have ayahuasca churches, and I talked to some people that would go, and it did change them. They had positive experiences. But I noticed people would be going to these churches every week, and they didn't seem to be doing that great. They would have good experiences while on ayahuasca, and it did change, and I'm sure they had lots of insights and openings, but it didn't do the entire trick, let's say that. It helped them probably a lot, but didn't do everything for them. So gurus are a lot like that. Let's say I've got this piece of paper in my pocket. I folded it up and I put it in my pocket. And let's say I take a psychedelic drug and I see all sorts of things, realities and insights, and I see, oneness. I'm one with all things, and then it wears off and poof, I'm back here. Is the paper still in my pocket? Yes. What if I want to learn love and I take ecstasy and my heart expands and I'm loving like I never thought I could, and I'm learning all about love, and then it wears off and I'm back to myself? Paper still in my pocket? Yes. What if I get a guru and he gives me a transmission for love or awakening, all these same things? It's an energy transmission, so it is quite different than a drug. I think the drugs sort of temporarily dissolve our inner blocks, and we feel who we are underneath these inner blocks. That's my theory. And then it wears off and the blocks reform, and there we are. With a guru, I'm not sure that it always melts our inner blocks. It might temporarily melt them. But in my experience with my longtime guru, I feel like what happened was his awakened energy so overrode my inner blockages that I saw life through his eyes and through his energy. I essentially experienced life in an awakened and powerful sense. Miracles were happening. People were being affected. Somebody measured my aura and it went out about 50 feet. It was very strong. Sometimes people just couldn't move in my presence. But it wasn't me. It was my guru's energy. Now, at the time, I thought it was maybe mine. I thought he was opening me up and I was feeling this opening, this oneness that is me. And it is me. But later, after he told me to go out on my own, that it was time, I had learned a lot about awakening because I lived his life through his energy. When I went off on my own, that energy withdrew, and now I was left to find awakening through my path, through my incarnation. And it was like turning off a light bulb. The good news is, slowly as I've continued on, I can feel the same energy I felt with him. I already know what it's like, and it's starting to exude through me in a natural way. It's the energy that's in all of us. I'm using me as an example because I have these experiences that often people haven't had a chance to have yet. So in answering the question, it's good to use me as an example, I think. Now, when his energy was coming through me, all my old personality was still there. It was just still really covered up with his powerful joy and healing and love. And so I often didn't feel my broken personality, if you want to call that, my hurting personality. But at other times I really did. So it was an odd juxtaposition of feeling a lot of grace, a lot of love, a lot of power, and at the same time feeling depressed or anxious or stressed. I remember it felt like I was in two worlds at the same time. So, back to this folded paper. The drug wears off, the paper is still here. The guru leaves, the energy leaves, the paper's still here. What is this paper? In this metaphor that I'm constructing, this paper is our personality. It's right where I left it. It doesn't change unless I change it. It's my personality. It's not Bhagavan's personality. It's not Amma's personality. It's not Jesus's personality. It's my personality. Now I realize on a deeper level we're all one. I experience that. But I also experience my personality. And I know it in my incarnation, on my path, I can let go. Because really in awakening, and nobody else can let go for me. In awakening, there's really only two things. There's experiencing who we are, and that's all the way even beyond existence, where some people would call that nothing, but you can experience it intuitively. And then there's also letting go of everything else so that you can flow and not be blocked, because anything you hold on to creates a tension, a grasping. So you can't flow if you're holding on to things. So that's it. There's just letting go and flowing, experiencing who you are and flowing down through your let go incarnation. But if you don't let go, you'll be kind of blocked. We'll call those blocks. That's what people call them. It's just you not letting go on many levels. So when the guru or the transmission leaves, you're back to yourself. When the drug wears off, you're back to yourself. However, not exactly, because perspectives change when you can see the world or the universe in a way you never imagined before. That's what Ram Dass was saying was good about psychedelics. He said maybe use it one time. His guru Neem Karoli Baba said maybe use one time. Just if your mind is so thick that you need an opening, just so you can see beyond your mind and start to know there's something more than just what you imagined. Well, a non-drug way is gurus. They help you experience what's beyond you. So it's a very powerful, and your perspective shifts, and also you know what to look for inside of yourself when you awaken. You already know what awakening feels like because you're experiencing your guru's awakening. So I would definitely recommend seeing a guru. In this context, you can see it's not a necessary thing, but it can be a profoundly helpful thing. So let me tell you what a couple of my experiences were around gurus, and I'm just going to abbreviate this because we could talk days on all the things I've seen and experiences. Miracles, ashes coming out of hands, and things, it could go on for days. In fact, I think I have a podcast called Miracles. You could scroll back and I describe more in that. But the first major guru that I saw, and she comes and goes on tours, at least did before COVID, and I'm going to give you the website of all these gurus so you can look them up if it's of any interest. And you can go see them or be available when they come see you, when they come to your town. But the very first powerful one was Amaji, and her website is AMMA.org. And you can look around it. She'll have one section that talks about tours, and it'll say where she'll be. She used to go all the way around the world, and as I said before COVID, she did. Now she's not traveling so much, but hopefully I've noticed a lot of gurus are starting to travel again now. The stunning thing about Amaji is the way it works is a lot of people come see her, thousands of people. And she usually, in the United States, goes to a very nice hotel and takes over all the conference rooms and all the meeting rooms, and they take out the sections, and it's just one giant room. And you meditate with her. Maybe there'll be, at any given time, maybe 1,000 people meditating, and it's very powerful. You might not feel anything at first because what I noticed is we're kind of blocked, and we don't know that we're blocked. But by sitting there, it's like you're soaking in pure energy, and slowly you start to open up and you start to radiate, because her energy and everybody else together's energy makes a very powerful force field of oneness, and the oneness that you are starts to very powerfully, and you feel it inside of you. And it's very startling. Before all this happened, I used to see, and I still do, see the universe strobing in and out of existence, maybe 1,000 times a second. I don't know. But in Amaji's presence, it seems to slow down, and the universe strobes in and out of existence maybe 10 times a second. So you can really experience the nothingness, the void, woof, and then everything reforms, and then the void, and everything reforms. There are some people that also can't get up off of the ground. It's very powerful. What is this powerful? It's the oneness that you are, and you feel it. So when I say that when you experience yourself in creation in a very pure form, it's so powerful, it's like an atomic bomb. Usually most people feel like I'm speaking metaphorically, but I'm not. And in her presence, after a while, after you soak in her, in the energy, and you open and open and open, you will start to feel like you're exuding an atomic bomb. That atomic bomb is you. You'll start to feel that, and it will be very enlightening, you might say. Now, after you leave, you'll be back to your old self. You'll think, oh, wow, this is who I am, and I'll be like this forever. But you won't be. You'll be back to your old self. It just gives you an opening for a while. But that opening is very instructive. You know, when people saw Jesus, he would have you read in the Bible, there'd be about 3,000 people would show up, or 5,000 people would show up. Now think about it. When you're in a room and there's about 25 people, and somebody's talking up front, and there's a baby crying, and somebody's coughing, and somebody sneezes, and stuff like that going on, can you hear that person very well? What if there's 50 people? What if there's 100 people? Well, the difference in Jesus' time, they didn't have microphones. You're in a room generally when the guy has a microphone. In Jesus' time, there was no microphones. There were goats and cows and babies and families and children running around. 5,000 people. Point is, nobody could hear a word that he was saying. It wasn't like, oh, here's a guy with a great Bible verse. Let me go hear him. It was the power, the energy that he exuded that drew people there. I don't think a person, I went to theological school. I did not understand that until I saw Amaji. Because she's probably a pale version of the energy that Jesus exuded. And she's extremely powerful. So, because she comes to your neighborhood likely, she goes all over Europe and North America. She has swamis and monks that go out too. She's accessible. Or you can see her in India. So that's Ammaji, AMMA.org. Very powerful. Now, with most of these gurus, I wouldn't pay attention to their teachings because some of their teachings are, they're good and everything, but they're not going to bring you awakening. Being around this presence, this energy, also will not bring you awakening, but it will show you what awakening is like. You still have to come back home and do the things that we talk about in our podcast. Let the stuff go that's blocking you. Nobody's going to do that for you. It's only you inside there, inside of you. You have to do it. And frankly, when I was in theological school, I was so desperate for answers. That's why I started in theological school. And it was just a start. I ended up in India, Bhutan. But you got to start somewhere. And that's where I started. But I was so desperate for answers, it was agonizing. I was in a bad way. And I was looking hard. And the full answer is not in theological school, but it is a start. And that's why I've done these podcasts I've taken, and I've been very diligent looking for my entire life, but I've taken all the things that I've found helpful, and I've put them into these podcasts. Some of them I don't talk about extensively, but I at least clue you into they exist, these topics, and then you can Google from there or find another teacher or find a podcast where they specialize in that subject that really pulls you. So I haven't really heard another podcast quite like mine, and it is free. So those of you that have listened know that. And I say that because I've been around an extraordinary number of extraordinary people, and I've had some extraordinary experiences, and I'm passing those along. It's not me, William. It's life and these experiences that I'm offering because I so desperately needed them when I was younger and I was in theological school. So there might be somebody out there like me. And I remember that pain very, very well. So that's Ammaji. I'd start there. The second thing you can do, I'm going to give you the name of my guru, a former one, and he's a friend of mine. He has millions of followers, and because I had a big group in Austin and a lot was happening through me, I would talk to him every day, by the way. I would talk to him. Here's a picture of he and his wife, Amma and Bhagavan, Oneness University. I do want to say that when I talk about gurus, they have organizations around them and lots of monks and people, and lots of crazy stuff happens and lots of scandals and lots of troubles. It's true. Like I said, John of God is in jail. He was very powerful, though. But he wasn't balanced in other ways. He had some emotional issues, some unresolved things, apparently. I don't know him that well, but a lot of gurus do. And we cover that in our podcast so that it doesn't become you. It's not your life. Hey, I'm awake, but I'm a crazy person. But I used to talk, I could talk to this. This is like a portal or a window. And I could talk to this, and I would get answers back from him, and I would talk to him many times a day, and I would hear him. And the odd thing is, when I went to India and I was talking to him personally one day, he looked at me kind of dumbfounded, and he says, you know, it's very strange. I have millions of followers, but you're on my mind all the time. It's because I was talking to him all the time, and he could hear it, and I could hear him. Very strange, but I would get correct answers. That's why I did it. So he's a very powerful person. Maybe another time I'll talk about all the things that happened with me. I became the future. I became very clairvoyant. Powers were coming through me. My brain felt like it melted and I became one with everything. It was just on and on and on. I could predict things. I could touch people and they would have miracles. Their problems would not every time, but many times be solved. How it worked, I don't know. Very strange. I'm like you. Just think you are sitting there wherever you are right now, and then this happens to you. You'd be like surprised the whole time, each and every time it happened. That was me. I was totally surprised. But it happened for 10 years. So I'm going to give you his website. They did a thing, and I used to do it too, called Diksha, which is basically a transmission where you touch somebody on the head, the energy flows through, and they go into, theoretically, an awakened state. And yes, it was an awakened state, and you did experience some awakening. And back then, because I first went to India and met him in 2004, back then we thought that these Dikshas would be cumulative and you would have permanent awakening. And they still say that that's the case. But I don't think so. I've given thousands and thousands of Dikshas, and they were very powerful. I was in the first group of trainers of about 10 people in the United States, and gave a lot of workshops all over. I had 7 states. And they were very powerful, but I don't think anybody ever awakened. They got to see what awakening was like. I didn't awaken. So when you're with these gurus, they will often say that these things will happen, but I don't think they really do. I think you get a taste of awakening. Again, it's a good experience, but I'm saying this so you don't get dragged down the chute and somehow just start following these people all the time, like, Amma, I have to be with you. I have to sell everything and be with you. It's so powerful and it's awakening. Or Bhagavan or whoever. Don't do that. I would say just feel what awakening is like by being in their presence, and then leave. Don't hang around. There's nothing more that you're going to get really beyond that initial understanding. Now, that initial understanding might take you a number of visits because you're so caked over perhaps that it'll take a little bit to dissolve and open you up. But once you feel what it feels like, then you've got an indication, and then go back and do what we talk about in my podcasts. Or if you find somebody you like better, listen to their podcasts and do what they suggest, and just keep evolving through podcasts, but do it yourself. Listen to your heart. The way you find out what he's doing, I don't think they're doing the hands-on Diksha anymore. Now they're giving you a bottle of water or some water, and they're calling it soma, and you drink the water. They change it up all the time, and it's like constantly, you're going to be awake, you're going to wake. Oh, now here's the new thing. Now it's water. Now it's this. Now it's that. It's all very powerful, so I'm not making light. It'll be one of the most powerful things you ever do. Just don't go down the rabbit hole with it. But his website is Sri, SRI, Amma, AMMA, Bhagavan, BHAGAVAN.org. That's his website. Very powerful. Just don't join up, okay? That would be my advice to you. Don't join anything. Any of these gurus, don't join up. Just experience it, and if one comes into your area, experience that guru, and then just move on to your practice. There's another one that gives awakening transmissions, and that's this group. The original guru was named Dada Bhagavan, and you can find their website. Their current guru is Deepak Bai, and they give this transmission that's called Gyanan Vidhi. They're out of Gujarat, the state of Gujarat in India, in Ahmedabad, right outside of Ahmedabad. I've been to their ashram. It is very powerful. And their website is dadabhagavan.org, and you spell that DADABHAGWAN.org. It is powerful, and there's some teachings that go with it. It's kind of a combination, transmission with teachings. The power of Bhagavan, my guru, I gave you the website earlier. You can also go to, for Bhagavan, you can go to he's got Facebook, and that would be Sri Bhagavan. Just look at that up on Facebook. SRIBHAGAVAN. My experience was I'd already seen, so many teachers, let's say 100, and awakened teachers already. And I'd been with Amaji already. Now I've seen her 200 times. Back then, probably 150 times, let's say. So I saw a flyer. There were people that had been trained by him. They put their hands on my head for $100, $108. They were from India. I thought, well, why not? Let's try it. It's not going to work. The next day I woke up and everything just melted, and everything was love. I didn't have to do anything. It was just radiant, pounding joy. And I thought, well, this will pass in about 20 minutes, but I'm going to enjoy it. I've heard of this, and I've been striving to experience this, and now I am, so that's good. So I sat there for 20 minutes, and it turned into 10 years. It never went away. Or 12 years. I've lost track of time. I don't know. A long time. It's really powerful. It's not awakening. I'm just telling you. So, but it's powerful, and you should experience it. Yeah, I mean, at least have the opportunity to experience it. There's another one that comes from India that tours around, and her name is, and that Deepak Bai, he tours around a little bit. All of these people do pretty much. Karunamaya, or they might say Karunamayi, KARUNAMAYI.org, karunamayi.org. She tours around. She's also powerful. And you need to sit with her for a couple. She's usually in one place for 2 or 3 days or 4 days. Sit with her as much as you can, and you'll progressively feel the power. I feel like Amaji's more powerful. Bhagavan is more powerful than that. If you wanted to rank them, if we want to have a hierarchy, that's not really right, but I don't know. I'm just saying. The Dada Bhagavan, very powerful too. There's another one, Ganapati Satyananda Swamiji. He comes to the United States every so often. He's the one, I went there with a medical doctor, a psychologist, and somebody else, three other people. And we had the wildest experience. I think I have it under my podcast of miracles. I don't want to go through it. It's about her dreaming. She has internal issues, so he cuts her open in the dream. She's a doctor, and she thinks he's going to heal her heart, and she doesn't feel good about the whole thing in her dream. And then he takes her heart and he eats it, and it's terrible. And she don't want to even see him after we've driven all the way over there. It was an 8-hour drive. Finally, we went. We're sitting on the front row. He's 6 feet away. He turns around. ashes start pouring out of his hands. The power is amazing. I mean, ashes going everywhere. And he says, take these ashes, they'll heal you. And he says, you're sick inside. And then he turns straight to the doctor, straight, nose to nose with the doctor. And I was sitting right next to her. He says, so I cut you open, I take your heart and I eat it so that I can heal you. And I mean, we just about passed out. Anyway, powerful nonetheless. So the way you get a hold of him, Ganapati Satyananda Swamiji, is dattapeetam.org. dattapeetam.org. You want to know a more normal one? That's very powerful. I was giving my group, there were probably 100 plus, maybe 100 people there. And our group was very powerful. Underneath, there was so much energy coming through the floor, because there was a room under there, that people were commenting like, wow, there's even more energy coming through the floor. Well, this guy that I'm going to tell you about was underneath us in Austin giving a workshop. And he's that powerful. He really is. But he's more normal. He gives normal teachings. All the rest of these, pretty much, I wouldn't worry about their teachings. Bhagavan, he's got good teachings. But this guy's got really good teachings. His name is Baba Shiva Rudra Bala Yogi. And his website is srby.org. srby.org. And he just kind of does it the old-fashioned way, kind of like my podcasts. You work on your stuff, you dissolve it, you let it go, and then you become radiant. You don't get a transmission and use somebody else's awakening and think you're awake. With him, you kind of get it yourself. So most people around him definitely are not awake because it's hard work. But he is, and he's very, very powerful. In India, I was around in Tiruvannamalai, a woman named Shiva Shakti, and I probably saw her 1,000 times because I was already in Tiruvannamalai, and she met for most of the time I was there 2 times a day, and so I saw her lots. She would look at you for 10 seconds and just open up your energy centers and leave you just with, she was trying to dissolve any blockages. And I think it did help. Did it awaken me? No. But I saw her 1,000 times, so, or so. Trying to give you a perspective, because maybe you don't have this opportunity to do this and then sort it all out. Another woman, Oh Mama, you would go to her, this was also in Tiruvannamalai, and she would throw flowers in your face, flower petals, really throw them very hard. They hurt, they stung, and she would laugh wildly. And your heart would open. I'm telling you, you would feel love like you've never felt it before. Very powerful. And you would just have to sit there for an hour or two. So powerful. And then your heart would close back down because you hadn't dealt with those things that had closed your heart, your old habits, your old PTSD, your old things. You just got a blast from her. So, and I've been around not only thousands, given thousands of these dikshas myself, but I've been around thousands of people in my travels. All these disciples, none of them are awake. There might be a few, let's say 1%. Because you have to do the things we talked about in our podcast. So the good news, transmissions like drugs, like psychedelics or ecstasy, give you a glimpse, but then you've got to do your work. And people often just get caught up in the guru or the drugs, and that's the problem. So I hope that answer. Oh, if you want to read a very good book that was written in the 1950s, because this whole guru thing seems so far-fetched. Everybody kind of thinks, well, maybe it's possible, but I don't know. I hear about it, but really? I don't know. So you can read a book, save you the trip to India for now. It was written by a reporter, and he was very, intensely curious, was this stuff real? And he was very skeptical. So he went to India and he talked to a lot of gurus and he examined them and he was around them, and he talks about what his experience was around all of them. And it rings really true. It's the most accurate book I've read that correlates to my experience. And he ends up in Tiruvannamalai with Ramana, and that's where I like to go, Tiruvannamalai. And he describes that place very well, I think. But he's describing it from the 1950s. But it's still very relevant, very good, and very well written. It's a page turner. The name of the book is In Search of a Secret India by Paul Brunton. I think it's Bruntan, something like that. I also have a podcast. It's around number 90. That's Awakening Books to Read. I think that's the title. And I list that book in that group too. These are helpful books. Okay, so I hope I've answered Catherine's question. That's why I couldn't answer it at the end of the last podcast. It's a big answer. I want to tell you another thing. I was around this man, very powerful, named Francis, and he lived for quite some time in Austin. And also, as I said, I was around John of God down in Brazil. Now, Francis was a healer. And I used to go see him. I would have, I went to workshops with him, and I would have appointments with him and see him personally. And I would just hang out where he was and just experience the energy. I don't know anybody that got healed. Probably some people did. But I never heard of any. And I asked, who's anybody getting healed? So I think it's more about awakening than a quick fix, and you have to awaken through your body. Do you heal as you let stuff go? Absolutely, because those pains and troubles, they can't be good for you, right? Probably a lot of them have, I would say absolutely a lot of them have been formed because we're blocked off and tense and stressed. So as we reverse that, we become younger and more healthy and flowing. So you can heal yourself. I do think healers can heal others. I just haven't personally seen it, but I do feel that. Jesus was doing that. That was widely reported about him. So it obviously can happen. I heard that John of God did. I just never met anybody, but I wasn't there that long. So, okay. I hope that helps and gives a perspective about gurus. What it felt like to me with my guru is that I lived his life, his awakened life, learned so much through that, but it was like it wasn't my life. It was like I described it before, living in somebody else's great house, learning what it's like to live in a great house and then want one for yourself, but then realizing, hey, this isn't my house. I'm living in somebody else's house. They're loaning it to me. Then you have to leave the house and go get a job, get your own house. Awakenings like that. Okay. If you do listen to my podcasts, if you decide, they're all free. And I would start with number 1 and work your way forward. Although any individual podcast stands by itself, and if you see a title you like a lot, I would just listen to that. But they're cumulative, and because they build upon the last one in some form or fashion, I'm laying a foundation, and I think they can be more powerful. And our end goal is for awakening, and that's a process. But I've gone down so many different sidetracks and rabbit holes that I'm trying to just give you the basics that will aim you in the right direction. And once you have those basics, sure, listen to 100 other podcasts, get 20 different teachers, go get transmissions and all that. But you'll have an inner foundation, an inner compass that's attuned to you, your heart. So you won't be just swaying and sucked down and chasing after the latest guru, if you decide to go that path. But do gurus exist? Yes. Are they powerful? Yes. Do they do the things that they say? Pretty much, in many ways, as I've just described. Okay, we have a few more minutes. Maybe I didn't describe it exactly what you need to hear or want to hear. I guess this is the podcast on gurus. Do you have anything else you would like me to talk about? If so, just type it in. And if not, and you have another question, type that in. I know I kind of caught you by surprise, didn't I? You know, when I got that first blessing in Austin, because I saw that flyer, it changed my life. So I'm not making light of that stuff. When I saw Amaji, it changed my life. I saw miracles happening. You know, when I first saw Amaji, a strange thing happened. I'm in private practice, a psychotherapist. Somebody calls me and says, you don't know me, but you're seeing a friend of mine as a patient, and I think she is going to kill herself. Do you have any time? And it was a Saturday, and I was going to go see Amaji for the first time. And I never even saw Amaji. I didn't know how to get to her or anything. And a group of people I didn't know were going to pick me up at 4. So I said, yeah, I could see her. She called about 9 in the morning, but I got to leave at 4. And as I left it at that, I didn't mention any Amaji business because that's kind of crazy stuff. And I'm a psychotherapist. I don't want to alarm people that I'm doing crazy, quote unquote, things. So she comes really late, like at 3:30, and I'm sweating bullets. And she wants me to use hypnosis, which I used a lot, take her back to the source, to her inner guides. And I'm a normal psychotherapist, but I used hypnosis a lot, and that was helpful to her. So I took her back to, I said, go find any inner resource that can give you answers. We got a half hour. Let's do it. And I'd worked with her before, so we could do it quickly. And we took her back, and she did not. I kept saying, okay, you can open your eyes in 15 minutes. You can open your eyes, because I thought these people would show up any minute. She didn't open her eyes for an hour. And I kept thinking, well, I got to wind this up. And when the people arrive, I'll just tell her we got to stop. But they never arrived till an hour or so later. And she opened her eyes before that time, and I said, how was that? And she said, wow, that was amazing. I got all my answers. I said, what happened? She said, I went inside and I found this guide that was very powerful and completely opened up and gave me what I needed. And I said, who was that? Who was your guide? Just, talking like I did in different sessions with people. And she says, well, it's nobody you know. I said, okay. She says, well, she's an Indian lady named Amaji. That's where I'm going for the first time. And she said, don't be worried about your friends, about you needing to go at 4, that your friends were going to show up. She didn't know where I was going, but that you got to leave at 4. She said, no, they're not going to show up at 4. This is what Amaji's telling her while she's deep down inside in hypnosis. She said, you don't have to hurry. Take all the time you need. His friends aren't going to show up. They're going to wander around. They're going to get lost. They're going to go in circles. And when you get all that you need, they will show up. She tells me this, doorbell rings, there they are, and we take off. She says, but before you go, one thing, give Amaji flowers. She likes flowers. So, okay. I get there, thousands of people, sit next to a doctor. We're waiting and waiting and waiting, and we're supposed to, because it's our first time, we're supposed to go up quickly, but they lost our group and the thousands of people, and they didn't call us for hours and hours. And finally, he was very angry and frustrated. He says, I've got to go. I've got a waiting room full of patients. I've been here far too long. Got to get back to my practice. He reaches under his chair. He hands me this giant, beautiful bouquet of flowers. He gives it to me and he says, here, hand these to Amaji. She likes flowers. So, we could go on and on and on about these gurus, but it's like that. The power was so amazing. I mean, people it just blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like it before. Like I said, it explained why so many people were around Jesus. It was the power, it wasn't the teachings, is my opinion. They couldn't hear him. 3,000, 5,000 people with no microphone, you can't hear anything. They were there because his power radiated for miles, just like Amaji's. But his, I'm sure, far more powerful. Okay, any questions for me? Oh my goodness. Laura says, how can I know if I'm guided by God's source or not? And if I feel I need to leave almost everything behind, do you think I have to do it? Or maybe keep a refrigerator just in case I have a feeling of letting go and live. But I question myself, will I need something? Yeah, don't do anything quickly, Laura. I'm going to do this podcast again the following Sunday, okay? Re-ask me that question, Laura, if you can attend. But a short answer is, your deepest self is not a panicky thing. It's not a panicky thing. There's no panic here. Life will work it out. Oneness, your deepest self will work it out. There's no problem here. And like I said last time, when I asked Bhagavan that, he said, look, you got to live life from where you are. There is no problem, but you think there is, so do what you need to do. I would give you that same advice, but if you can possibly hold off, tune in on Sunday and let's talk about it a little bit more deeply. Take a breath. Go walk outside barefooted. Touch a tree. Do something like that. Get grounded. Get back to your center. I'm sorry that's not a thorough answer, but it's not about just letting go of everything and taking off. It's nothing to do with that. And I'm not sure that that's what you're saying, but if it is, I'd say we need to talk and get a more productive approach, one that's going to serve you better, okay? So we can try. But let's do it next Sunday because we're out of time. And you know what they did last time? They cut me off. It goes black. So you have to be where you are. And remember, Laura, if you feel panicky and anxiety, that's where you are. So sit still and watch it. Touch a tree. Don't make any quick moves unless you absolutely have to. Okay, let's talk next Sunday. I really enjoyed it, and now I need to look at some of these questions. I'm sorry, I just didn't see them. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye. Hello, this is William. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please consider sharing it with somebody else. Send them a link. Thanks so much.